Hello everyone and welcome to our short webinar today. We're looking at how to keep your staff engaged and resilient during periods of change. This is our second webinar, and if you missed out on the first one, it is available on our YouTube channel for you to look at later. So we are quickly approaching the end of the furlough scheme. And there's much uncertainty about redundancies, about mergers, and about business closures. And although change in business is inevitable, it's particularly relevant at the moment. So today we want to help you with some tips and advice for you and your staff. Sorry. Oh dear, joys of technology. Anyway, so my name is Jackie from JM Professional and Career Coaching Services, and my background's further education, and I've been a manager, been in further education. I was in further education for 20 years, was a manager for 15 years, and I've been coaching since 2006. So I spend my time coaching and training managers and leaders and to develop their leadership skills. I also help people to progress in their careers, and particularly interested in helping people improve their confidence and break down some of those self-imposed barriers that many of us have. Today I'm joined by Andrea Thomas, who is a health and mindset coach, and today Andrea is going to be giving us some practical coaching techniques, but I will hand over to Andrea so she can introduce herself and tell you a little bit about what she's doing today.
Hi, thanks Jackie. So I'm Andrea Thomas of Andrea Thomas Coaching, and like Jackie said, I'm a health and mindset coach. My background is that I've spent over 20-30 years in the travel and hospitality industry, and for the last 10 years of that I was a performance coach. So I coached, mentored and managed teams of people to help them to reach their full potential. But due to my own health journey, I decided to retrain, and so now I am on a mission to help other people live healthy, vibrant and purposeful lives. So like Jackie said, I'm going to be talking about the same subject, but from a slightly different angle to Jackie. I'm going to be talking about it from a health and well-being point of view, with lots of hints and tips for you as leaders and for your team and for us as just human beings trying to cope with all the change and uncertainty that's going on at the moment.
Brilliant. Thanks, Andrea. So today I'm going to be looking particularly at how you manage your staff. And as the quote from Warren Bennis suggests, and as I've already said, we're used to that. We're used to change in business. But, you know, mergers, redundancies, closing a business can be devastating for those people that are involved, especially where an individual we know that 33% of businesses in a recent poll are planning redundancies by the end of September, by the end of this month. We know that there are a lot fewer people in jobs than in the previous quarter. And we know that some of the big names on our high streets and in the UK are talking about redundancies. So this is a massive issue that we're facing at the moment. So how does it impact on staff? Well, we know that 58% of employees have suffered with their mental health as a result of uncertainty of their current work or furlough and not knowing if they're going to have a job to return to. And the more we pay attention to things that are out of our control and things like furlough and, you know, retaining your job are out of your control, the more out of control that you feel. And that lack of control then causes anxiety, and that anxiety causes stress because it increases activity in the amygdala, in the brain's emotional centre. And I know that Andrea is going to talk a bit about that, so I'll leave that there for now. But as that anxiety and as that stress increases, then coping becomes more difficult. And we know from our animals that they react to danger, to anxiety and danger, by fight, flight or freeze. Now, I'm sure you've also seen that in people. So when there's change, you've got people that will fight it. You've got people that will flight. And what I mean by that is you've got people that when there's redundancies announced or any structure changes, that they will start applying for other jobs. And you may say to me, well, Jackie, that's great because we're making redundancies. If some people go, then that's okay. Well, are they the right people? Are they the right people that you want to leave? Are you losing your top talent? So that's very important. And then you've got freeze. And what I mean by freeze is people that put their head in the sand, that really don't want to talk about it, don't want to admit that it's happening. And when we come on to talk about the different stages in the change journey, you'll see that if people stay in that stage, then they won't come to accept what's happening. So those things are really important. I'm sure you can all think of people. I would class myself as a flight person because I've got a tendency, oh, if something's happening, I will apply for another job, and I have done that before. So the other thing that we've got to think about is what influences anxiety. And in people, you're talking about genetics, you're talking about childhood experiences, and you're talking about individual psychological vulnerability. And so what does that tell us? What does all that tell us? It tells us that every single member of staff is different, and they will all respond differently during these times of change. So in actual fact, it's a bit of a headache if you're a manager and a leader, because everybody's different and everybody's behaving differently. But we have got to try and manage that. So I mentioned the 4 stages. So let's just have a look at that and see what's important in each of those stages. So the first stage, you've got shock, disorientation and denial. And it's that denial, that freeze that I was talking about in the previous slide. And that freeze, that denial, if people get stuck there, they're not going to work through the stages and get to the end where they've accepted things. So important to follow up on that with people. And at this stage, communication is the absolute key. So keeping staff fully informed of what's going on is absolutely key. People then move through into the emotional stage. So you've got anger, fear, crying, all of those sorts of things. And it's really important that staff are able and feel able to express those emotions. Those emotions need to come out. And it's our responsibility to help and support people with that. Stage 3, we're getting to the acceptance stage here, but also important is time, because again, people need different amounts of time to work through that stage to get to that acceptance. And then finally, we get to the moving on and commitment stage. Now, at this stage, depending on the circumstance, you might want to celebrate. So I'm not suggesting that if you've made redundancies, obviously, that if there's been a big change, a big software has been put in, a new system has been put in, and everything's gone great and everything's working fine, then that's the time to celebrate. So that depends on the individual situation that you're in. So mindset to all of this is really, really key, and maintaining or promoting a positive mindset is something that you can help with the staff. So we know that they're going to have a stress response. We know that the situation is new, they've got no control, or they feel they've got no control, and they can't predict the future. So it's about taking steps to reduce those things for your team members. So what I'm going to do now is talk you through a case study, and hopefully you'll be able to pick up some tips from this, because this is the best way that I saw of a big change being dealt with. So it's the best way I've seen it being dealt with, where it was really positively, the feedback from the staff was really positive about the way that it had been dealt with. So this was about a merger. There was a large organisation merging with a smaller organisation, and the staff in the smaller organisation really, really feared for their jobs, and they thought that the larger organisation was taking over and they wouldn't have a job. So what was key from this case study, that was a communication strategy. So the two organisations came together and put together a strategy for their communication with the staff. But before they even built the strategy or wrote the strategy, they identified what their aims were for the strategy. So what did they want to achieve? And it helped the organisations establish what they wanted to achieve and what was really important to them. And one of the key things was the rumour mill. So have you ever heard a positive rumour? Probably not as many times as you've heard a negative rumour, and they can be very damaging, really, really damaging. So one of the key aims was to keep the rumours to a minimum. Next was to engage the staff and to make them feel as if they had an amount of control over what was happening. So to overall decrease the stress for the staff. So remember, we were talking about novelty, uncertainty, uncontrollability. So reducing all of those things. They also identified that different staff like to be updated by different methods. And you're going to turn to me and say, but Jackie, we haven't got time to do that. But there are some quick wins that we're going to talk about in a minute. Supporting staff, again, supporting staff through that difficult time with the emotional side, and also about keeping the staff that leave to a minimum. And I said to you before about the flight people, that, you know, change is coming, let's get a job before I'm pushed out sort of thoughts. And in this particular case study, although the larger organisation was a bigger organisation, and the smaller organisation, the staff felt as if they were going to lose their jobs, there were no plans to make any redundancies, so that stopping the staff from leaving was a really, really important aim of the strategy. So, okay, that's the aims. So what did they actually do? So, communication. Now, I'll put face-to-face, a bit tricky these days, so it might not be face-to-face, it might be over something like Zoom, like we're doing. But, and you say, well, that's standard, face-to-face communication, that's standard, everybody does that. But what was different was the fact that it was at every level within the organisation. So it wasn't just the CEO, it wasn't just the line manager, it was via department, via teams. So at every level, you've got regular communication, and that was really important. And remember what we said in our last webinar, if you were there, we talked about where staff are working from home and the fact that they need to feel included. So that's important to take into consideration. And we talked about increasing the frequency and decreasing the amount of time. So you're in touch more often, but for a shorter amount of time. So those things need to be taken into consideration if people are at home. Not always possible, depends on your situation, but in this case study they used technology. And as I said, you know, different people like to be communicated in different ways, so face to face. Some people like technology, so frequently asked questions were put up on the intranet, and they also had the facility to do anonymised questions. You may or may not have that facility, but it is really useful so that staff feel comfortable about asking those difficult questions. And this, the staff rep forum was probably one of the most successful parts of this case study. So that was a representative from each team, and they got questions, they got the rumours from the staff, and they brought them to a fortnightly meeting, and they were encouraged, and they did talk about the rumours. And what that allowed was that the senior team could answer those rumours, and they could give a response to that, and it really did stop the rumour mill, because they could ask about the rumours and they could get an answer for that. So that was really, really useful. And they could ask any questions. They got the answers, and then they went back to the staff and in their teams and told them. But what also happened was there was a newsletter, and again, it's a different way of communication, but it took the same information. So there was a rumour buster page, there's frequently asked questions, there was a support section, and there was input from the CEO about how the merger was progressing. So there you've got several methods of communication. And then the last one that did happen, and of course this might not be useful if you're in a redundancy situation, but in the merger situation, they visited each other's premises. So staff from one site went across to another site. So that was really good use of different communication methods, and the staff representatives forum particularly helped to quash rumours and stop that negativity from proliferating around the two organisations. So moving on, what can you do on a daily basis? So there's loads of things that when you're going through change as a manager and a leader, you can do with staff to you know, make things easier. So we've spoken already about positive attitude and being optimistic. Yes, it is easier said than done when times are tough, but you know, as a leader, as a manager, it's important to have that positive attitude with the staff. And it does provide an opportunity, so use it as an opportunity to promote change, to talk about change, how it impacts on the organisation, how it impacts on the finances, what are the gains, what are the benefits. So it can be used as an opportunity to put that change into context. Encouraging staff to use their support network, so whether that be at home or at work. But it's also, you know, listening to the staff, listening to what their issues are and pointing them in the right direction. And also looking out for the individuals that are avoiding the issue. Now, again, those two things together, if you don't tackle them, can cause the staff to take longer to work their way through those stages of change. So really important to look out, especially for those avoiding the issue. Interestingly, we tend to learn more in situations when we're not sure about something, but we also listen more intently. So your staff are going to be listening to everything you say and really taking it in and remembering what you say from one meeting to the next. So really important to be absolutely clear on your messaging. If you're not sure, to say that you're not sure and you'll find out for them, better that than tell them something and tell them something else different the next time, and then remember that. So that's really, really key. Encouraging staff to ask questions, you know, it's that trying to reduce the uncertainty, which is one of the things that cause the stress. So encouraging staff to ask questions is really important, as is helping them to develop their own coping mechanisms. And I know this is something, again, that Andrea is going to pick up on in a bit more detail. But it is true that by helping others or making time for ourselves, we help ourselves cope. So within the work situation, you might think about buddy systems, for example. So where you've got teams that are going through potential redundancies, buddying them up and having some support for each other. And then also, and finally on this, in our last webinar, we talked a lot about emotional intelligence. And again, it crops up here because when you've got the staff going through this period of change, and we've talked about the different emotions, it's important to promote empathy within the team. And we've already said that, you know, some people are defined by their work, so this can be devastating for them to potentially lose their jobs. So it's promoting within the team consideration for others, empathy, understanding. Okay, so as last time, because I am a coach, I always talk about reflection. It's really important. So take some time to consider if you've got all these bases covered with your staff, if you're about to go through change, or if change is on the horizon. Is there something else that you could be doing to make change a little bit easier for the staff? And if you want to talk about any of this, we will be doing questions at the end, by the way, after Andrea's done her presentation as well. So we're going to save those questions to the end. But if you have got anything that you want to get in touch with to talk through, then all my information is on the slide, so please get in touch. And that's all from me for now. And I'm going to hand over to Andrea.
Get myself off mute. Thank you, Jackie. Let me share my screen with everybody. Okay. Right. Hi, everyone. So like I said before, my name's Andrea and I'm a health and life coach. So I've done all my retraining and I'm now running my own business. I believe that health is the foundation of all potential. If we don't have our health, we can't achieve much in life. And I'm on a mission now to help as many people as possible to live as healthy, vibrant and purposeful life as they possibly can, no matter what health setbacks they've had along the way. So like I said, I'm going to talk about the same subject matter as Jackie, but from a slightly different angle, from more of the health and well-being angle, and I'm going to offer some really valuable hints and tips for you as leaders, for your teams, and just for us as human beings trying to navigate our way through some crazy times. So as we all know, change is inevitable. It's one of the facts of life, but growth is optional, and that's what we all ideally would like. So this is the ideal picture of our workforce. We want happy, healthy, resilient people. They're twice as likely to adapt well to change, and 64% more likely to recover fully after illness, hardship, and bad times, really. So we want happy people. And going forward, resilient, agile, flexible and adaptable people are the sort of people that are going to help take our businesses forward through the period of fear and uncertainty and beyond, which is what we all are looking for. But unfortunately, the reality, this is how most of us view change. And especially for people who are sort of defined by their job role, and a lot of their identity is built into their status, their job role, their responsibilities at work. So if there's change within the business, then different levels of stress, anxiety and overwhelm will be fired up when the stress response is fired up. And underneath all that stress, anxiety and overwhelm is fear. That is the root cause of all those emotions, is fear. We talked about stress quite a lot last time in the webinar, I think is available on YouTube at the moment. We talked about the negative effects that stress can have on us as individuals and our health, on businesses and on society as a whole. And we need to now learn to be able to manage the stress and the anxiety and overwhelm and the underlying fear effectively as we move forward, so that we don't increase those negative statistics on health at the moment. So just so it's not so depressing what I'm talking about, I'm going to offer a slightly more optimistic view of stress. Stress is just a thought. I don't want to diminish the real hardships some people are facing at the moment. But the benefit of seeing stress is just a thought is that gives us a sense of control, and the opposite, takes away our control. Both of them are true. But which one do you prefer? It is a choice. But knowing that fear and stress is just a choice doesn't take away the thoughts and feelings associated with those emotions. So how can we start to see stress and fear differently? So I'm going to talk a little bit about the science, not too much, and I'll try and keep it really simple. Then I'm going to give you some tips and techniques as leaders, and then some tips and techniques for human beings. So this could be for yourself, for your teams, for your family and friends, for your teenagers. They're really useful tips and techniques just for us as human beings trying to cope, take ourselves forward through the madness that we're in at the moment. So as we know, the brain is a very complicated organ, so I'm going to keep it as simple and as straightforward as possible and just talk about these two different areas. So most of the time at work, we're dealing with our frontal cortex, which is our modern brain, and that's where we have our logical thinking, we use our intelligence, we use our creativity, and that part of our brain thrives on change. It constantly wants us to evolve, wants to take us to the next level, learn the next skill, gain that new promotion. That's where we want to be, and that's what we like. We like our frontal cortex. It's our modern way of thinking, and that's what drives us forward. But when the stress response has been triggered, that which is triggered by our amygdala, which is part of our brainstem, which is our prehistoric brain, the only role of that part of our brain is to keep us alive. It is to keep us in as survival. It's a survival mechanism. So when our fight, flight, or freeze response is triggered, that means that our amygdala has center stage. So all the modern brain, the modern cortex, or any other parts of our brain is forgotten, and our amygdala takes center stage because its only job is to keep us alive. It fears change because change threatens our survival, and that's why it fires to the front. That fires up our anxiety, it fires up our stress and our overwhelm. The problem is that the amygdala doesn't know the difference between a lion attacking us in our cave when we were cavemen, or our boss just telling us that there's redundancies imminent, or that there's going to be a merger, or that we've been stuck in a traffic jam for 2 hours. It doesn't know the difference. It will fire up the same physiological response within our body. So how can we take control of that? How can we manage that effectively? Because we don't want the amygdala to die off, because if a car comes at us at 70 miles an hour, we need that fight, flight, and freeze response to get us out of the way so that we do stay alive. We need to start to work with it. So I'm going to talk through some tips for you as leaders to help you to start managing that response. And I'm going to start with some simple but not necessarily easy tips. I'm not going to talk about it too much because Jackie's already covered it, and we covered some of them in the earlier webinar. So communicate lots, communicate lots, communicate lots. I'll repeat and repeat and repeat. That is the key to everything. Just keep communicating. Show that you genuinely care about the people that you're responsible for. It goes such a long way. Engage and support your staff. During times of change, remain people-focused, not process-focused. And focus on the big vision for the business, where the business is going in the future. Don't get lost in the finer details. That will help you manage your energy levels and your stress levels as well. The key for leaders is emotional intelligence. If we can strengthen the muscle for your emotional intelligence, then you will be able to have more successful work, social and home relationships, and a healthier mental and physical life. So we need to strengthen the emotional intelligence muscle. And it is a muscle. It's like going to the gym. We just need to practice it and grow it and strengthen it. So this is a very, very quick tip for in the moment to help improve your emotional intelligence. And it's to ask yourself these 3 quick questions. So you're in a meeting and it might be getting a bit heated and you're a bit defensive, or emotions are running high. So I want you to ask yourself these 3 questions. Does this need to be said? Does this need to be said by me? And does this need to be said now? So in that moment of thinking of something you want to say, there's a space before you say it. And in that space, over time, as your emotional intelligence grows, that space grows, and you'll be able to ask yourself these questions. And then the choice that you will make from asking those questions will mean that the outcome will be more effective. Really want to spend a bit of time talking about anchoring. This is a really, really useful technique. It's a powerful technique to help you strengthen that muscle, that emotional intelligence muscle. It's a technique that we use in NLP, in neuro-linguistic programming, and it helps to manage your emotional state. And anchoring can be the difference between making or breaking your day or somebody else's day or week or month. It's a really powerful technique. And as a leader, it starts with the ability to lead yourself. And that starts with managing your emotional state. Anchoring is a technique that helps us create a trigger to help us elicit an ideal emotional response. And it's really, really useful in times of change to help you get the results that you want effectively and positively, which is the ideal outcome that we want during these periods of change. So I'm going to talk you through the technique, and it will take a bit of practice, but I want you to think of a time where you have had the ideal emotional state in a professional setting. So take yourself back to it. Maybe you were making a speech, maybe you were in a presentation, maybe you were having a really powerful one-to-one where you felt really in control. So I want you to take yourself back to that moment and evoke the emotions you were feeling in that situation. So I'm going to guess that you felt strong, you felt powerful, confident, calm, in control, influential, any other emotions that came up. So take yourself back to that situation and evoke those emotions. I want you to feel what you felt, hear what you heard, and see what you saw. Really feel into it. Really feel, take yourself back. Just have a quiet few moments and take yourself back to that situation. And when you're there, I want you to think of an anchor that you can introduce. It needs to be quite a quick anchor. So it could be a pinch of the little finger, maybe a rub of the ear, rub of the elbow. Maybe it's a word. Maybe it's a smell. Maybe you can wear your favorite perfume or aftershave. So maybe it's a song. But think of something that you can just anchor that situation that you've just taken yourself to. And then spend a few minutes with your anchor and thinking of that situation. And then I want you to break out of it. Just as quickly as you went in, I want you to break out, and to break out completely. So sing a nursery rhyme, do some mental maths, and then I want you to repeat it. So take yourself back to that emotional response, do the anchor, and then break it. And then repeat, repeat, repeat. And the more that you practice this technique, the more you will wire that connection into your brain, and it will produce a physiological change within your body and mind. And then when you're about to give some bad news to someone, or to maybe to your whole team or your whole department, and you want to have that ideal emotional state, you can just introduce that anchor, and straight away you're there. Your body language will change, your emotional state, you'll be there, you'll be in that ideal state. And then you will produce, more likely to produce, an effective, positive outcome, which is what we're all wanting to do. Now, if that sounds a little bit woo-woo and a little bit hippie and you're not quite sure, then what if I said the word spiders to you? I'm sure for most of us, it's going to evoke an emotional response, either fear or scared, or maybe it was a time when you used to tease your little sister with them when you were children, but it will evoke an emotional response in you. We use anchors every day. So let the anchors start to work for us, not to us, so we can have the outcomes that we're desiring. Okay, here's some simple tips for us as human beings. So like I say, use them on your children, use them on your team, and use them with family and friends, use them on yourself. These are just really easy, quick techniques that are really useful in times of change or any time. Just breathe. When we consciously take a few breaths, it will naturally calm us down. Breathing, consciously breathing, is the simplest, cheapest, and most effective tool we all have as human beings. When we consciously breathe, we are sending a message to our amygdala to tell it that we are safe, that there's no lion coming to attack us, that we're out of danger, and it will calm us down. Consciously breathing is the best thing we can do. You don't have to meditate, you don't have to do it in a yoga practice. Just 2 or 3 deep breaths will tell our brain that we are calm, we are safe, we're not in danger. We could also do this. We could also talk about worst case scenario. And Jackie talked about this a bit earlier around the rumour mill. So normally, as human beings, our instinct was go, oh, well, that's just a rumour, ignore it, pretend it's, it's not real, don't listen to them. And that's good, because it shows we care and it shows we sympathise, but it doesn't take away that fear and anxiety from that person. In actual fact, what it does, it makes it worse, because they now attach judgment and guilt to it as well. Because they're like, oh, I shouldn't be feeling like this because such and such said for me to ignore it. So the rumour mill is a really good worst case scenario, but I've got an even worse one. So maybe this is how somebody's feeling, yeah, and maybe they're not articulating it, but this is what they're thinking in their heads, and maybe they've gone down this rabbit hole of worst case scenario. So if you can, let's talk about it, okay? And work backwards and make a plan. So by working backwards, we're taking them from an imaginary future that doesn't exist and bringing them back to the present day, okay? So we start from the back. They're going to end up on the streets. And you're going to keep asking them how likely that is. And by questioning it and working through a plan, until you get the answer of, no, it's not very likely, and then move on to the next stage. So how likely are you going to end up on the streets? Oh, well, quite likely. Well, really, is that true? Well, no, because I could ask my family or my friends to look after me for a few weeks. So how likely is it that you're going to end up on the streets? No, not very likely. Okay, and then work backwards. And then when they're back in the present moment, how do you feel now? Okay, I feel all right. They're armed with more knowledge and with a plan of action should the worst case scenario happen, which it won't, because 90% of stress and fear never becomes a reality. Our future is imaginary, and all fear and all uncertainty live in that imaginary future. It doesn't even exist. The only thing that exists is that I'm talking to you and you're listening to me. That's all that's real. So if we're able to remain in the present moment, then we can control our emotions. And all the tips and techniques I have shared helps you to achieve this. And remember, attention goes where energy flows, as per the great Tony Robbins. So if you're going to put your energy and attention down that rabbit hole of rumour mill or worst case scenario, then that's going to end up nowhere but a dead end of fear, anxiety, stress, overwhelm, and worst case scenario, disease. But if you choose to go down the other route, where your attention goes down and your energy goes to a place of opportunity, potential, the what ifs of new beginnings, then that's where your energy is going to go, and that will help you to control your emotions and stay in a positive state. And again, this is your choice. The future is imaginary, and where you want to choose to focus your emotions and energy is where your future is more likely to go. So just to finish, I'm going to ask you a couple of questions. What are the most common challenges or problems you see showing up over and over again in your teams or in your own behaviour? And what is one small step that you could take to get today to begin to address them? And what areas of your own health and well-being could be upgraded or improved to help strengthen your own resilience and emotional intelligence during this time of change? So as a coach like Jackie, take some time to reflect on this and answer them in your own time and see if there's anything that you can do. As a health coach, I transform people's health and well-being through habit change, and so that it can reach their full potential in all aspects of their life. So if you need any help or support around this, then please get in touch. I'm happy to help. Thank you. Thank you for listening. And me and Jackie now will welcome some questions.
Right. Thank you, Andrea. We are bombarded with questions. We've got loads.
Okay.
So
That's fine.
So hopefully we can get through them all. We've got some on Q&A, some on chat. So I'm just going to get started. I just want to say, before we start with the questions, for anybody that needs to dash off or anything, if we don't get through all the questions, remember that please contact us, just get in touch if you want any help with anything, if you just want to chat about anything we've talked about. That's what we're here for. That's what we're doing this, just get in touch with us. Just in case you have to dash off, because we've got even more questions now.
Oh, right, okay.
Yeah, we've got loads.
Okay.
So
I'm used to asking the questions, not the other way around.
I know. That's what we do as coaches.
Yeah.
Right, let's start. So, Andrea, the first one we've got on here is, how do you deal with very negative people? So I don't know the context of that, but it's obviously somebody that is in a situation of change, and they must have a person or several people that are being really negative, and presumably they are impacting negatively on the rest of the team. What are your thoughts about that?
I think, like you said with the rumour mill, I would just give them opportunity to talk, to voice their concerns, and then I would question it as well, because maybe they're not fully aware. I'm guessing that they're going to have an impact on the people around them, and they're going to, mood hoover. They're going to spread their negativity. So question their the impact that they're having and how that might come across to other people, because they might not have even recognized that. They might be just self-absorbed in their own fears and worries, which is basically what it is. That's all negativity is just they're in that stress response, and they need some support around that. So that's all it is. Okay. But they need to recognize their impact as well.
Yeah, so there might be a conversation with them around, do you understand the impact that you're having on others, in a nice way, in a coaching way, but maybe also, we talked about empathy, didn't we, and understanding where they're coming from, or ask them where that's coming from. So introducing some coaching questions, with that individual, to find out their drivers and what is driving them particularly. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. And they might not be articulating their worst case scenario, and it's coming out in terms of defense and negativity, but behind the scenes they might be really, really worried about providing for their family, where they can get another job. So by coaching them, by showing that empathy and giving them that support, you might be able to coach that out of them.
I think it is very true, and I agree with you that sometimes people don't realise how much of an impact they're having on other people. So yeah, I think that's really key. All right, we're going to move on swiftly. So how do you support a team when you are going through the same thing? Yeah, so you may be leading a team or managing a team, but you're also at risk, presumably, or you're also embroiled in there's no detail about the situation, but embroiled in that change. What are your thoughts on that?
I think that's when that anchoring technique will really come in handy. You know, I am assuming they're a leader or a manager in some form, so they still have a job role to do and they should still lead and manage their team, but they could do that more effectively if they can anchor in that ideal emotional response. So it's building that emotional intelligence muscle, so that they're able to put their concerns to one side while they're dealing with their team. But yeah,
I'd agree with that, and I think some of the techniques that you've shown us today are really, really useful. But from my point of view, from a manager point of view, even if you're a manager, you are going to have a manager, and they should also be supporting you.
Absolutely.
You need to go back to your manager and say what your needs are as well.
Absolutely.
Good. Right, we will crack on. Okay. So Peter has sent us in a question, and he has a team of 5, and he said, got a bit more detail for this one. What sort of support system should you have to help with coping with change, and is it something you can help with? So I'm not quite sure, Peter, what you mean by support systems. I think we've talked through a lot of the ways in which you can support your staff and how you can help cope with change. So from a management point of view, but also some of the techniques that Andrea has shown, and definitely it is something that we can help with. And you know, if you want to have a conversation with either of us, then please get in touch to see what we can do to support you if your team's going through some change. Andrea, anything else you want to add to that?
Yeah, I think so. I think one of the key skills of a manager is to know when what your strengths and weaknesses are, and if this is not where your strengths lie, then there's people that you can that do that, as in Jackie and me, who can come in and can help and support your teams through that period. But your teams are they need support and guidance through periods of change, and well, through all periods, but definitely through change and uncertainty. You want them to remember you as a positive influence. They'll always remember they'll forget what's the Maya Angelou, they'll forget what you say, they'll forget what you do, but they'll never forget how you made them feel. So that's all I can say, really. But if it's not one of your strengths, then there's people that you can bring in who can support your team through that.
Okay, thank you. Moving on. So I haven't got the name of the next person, but they have a plant hire business near Birmingham. They are talking about culture and how we can define our culture, as in their business's culture. And once we have developed our culture, is there software or processes you follow to develop that into the rest of the team? So I mean, one of the first things I would say about that is, do you know what you want your culture to be in your organization? And one of the things I would really encourage you to read is about psychological safety and the 4 stages of psychological safety. And that's looking at inclusion of everybody within the organisation. It's looking at the safety around learning, and then being able to use that learning and be safe to make mistakes. Then the safety about inputting, and then the safety about challenging. So I'd really suggest that you have a look at that. It is a little bit out of the scope of this particular webinar, but again, please get in touch with us if you want to follow that a little bit more. I'm not sure about, from my point of view, I don't know about you, Andrea, but culture comes from inside the organisation. It's not really about a process. It's not following
No.
process. It's not about software. It's about people.
Yeah.
Everything around culture is about people. It's about emotional intelligence. It's about developing those skills. It's about developing the psychological safety, and it's all people centered.
Yeah.
So bits of software and processes are not going to help you in that situation. Andrea, I don't know what your thoughts are on that.
I completely agree. The one thing I was going to say is, if you're introducing a culture, if you're wanting to introduce a way of being as part of a business, then I think, like you said, it's really important that you include everyone at all levels to embed that culture. So it's no good saying, the MD coming down and saying, I want to embed this culture. Well, that's, a culture is, it's all encompassing. It's who you are, how you think, what you say, how you treat each other, all those things. So it's very emotive. It's not a process. You can't document it anywhere. It's what you live and breathe, and how you want your people to interact with each other and with the customers and things like that. So you need to embed it at all levels with everybody to be included.
Okay, lovely. Let's move on. We've still got more to go, Andrea, so don't get away that quickly. Okay, so we've got another question from somebody who runs an events company.
Okay.
And they are struggling with their team to really come to terms with all the constant legislation changes. And around whether they can or they can't run events. So that's sort of changing all the time. So what is the best way to approach keeping my team resilient through this time, and also my own personal mental health?
Yeah.
Do you want to start on that one?
I think it is an absolute whirlwind, and one of the pluses to this whirlwind that we're all in is that we're all in it. You're not alone. So I would get as much support as you possibly can from family, friends, from colleagues, from other businesses that are going through the same, so you've got that solid foundation of support for yourself. But all the techniques that we've just gone through there, for your own health and well-being, in terms of, and then if you're strong, then you will have energy to be able to keep your team buoyant and positive along the way. So yeah, I've got loads more techniques and tools that you can use to help improve those situations, but you need to be able to manage your energy effectively, so that which involves getting a good structure of support around you, so that you're able to then pass that on to other people. If you take it back to what I do on a daily basis, is I make sure people prioritize their own self-care and their own health and well-being. You're no good to anyone if your cup is half empty. Your cup needs to be overflowing, and then you're able to impart your energy to other people.
Okay, can I just pick up on keeping your team resilient though? So what we've talked about is that positivity as well, and it's about reducing that stress response. So from a positivity point of view, are there some quick wins? Are there some positive things that you can do with the team? Because the change that's happening, and the upset that is happening with your particular area of events is it's going to keep being a problem going forward. So it's about how you keep that positivity going, and are there some quick wins? Are there some positive things that you can do with the team that can keep your enthusiasm and your positivity going? And it could be quite small things, but again, it's trying to find something that you can all hang on to, which is positive, and you've got something to look forward to, and you've got something that you can do that's positive.
Can I say one other thing as well, Jackie, if I got time?
Yeah, go for it.
I've just thought of Stephen Covey's circles of influence, and you haven't, so you need to be concerned about legislation and government guidelines around restrictions and things like that. Of course, we all have to be, but you have no control or influence over that. So don't focus your energy on that, because that's just zapping your energy. You can't control that situation. But what can you control? You can control your own well-being and mental health, and then you can control and influence the team around you. So make sure you're focusing your energy in the right places, that where you can influence and that you do have control over.
And this is a sports events company, and so I know how competitive sports people are. So, you know, it's about challenging yourself to find something positive and to find a way of enthusing the team. You know, what can you find? Just to keep that motivation and keep that positivity going. Okay. Right, I think this might be our last question, unless anybody comes through with any more. So, emotional intelligence, Andrea, is there any software or training we can get our teams to help them develop this?
I don't know of any software.
So again, I think we're going back to what we were saying before about culture. So emotional intelligence is all about people, and it's finding out what emotional intelligence is, and how you can understand yourself, how you can understand others. But really, ideally, you want to look at it in the workplace, because you can do courses on emotional intelligence, but it's the practical application that is most important, and that's where you get the most out of it with your teams.
There are plenty of books as well. To get started, read NLP for Dummies. That's a good place to start. Or the Chimp Paradox, that's another good place to start, to help learn more about emotional intelligence. There's plenty of books out there, podcasts, things like that.
And I'll just say, for that particular person, if you contact me, I've got an infographic about emotional intelligence for the workplace, so which I can let you have if you get in contact with me. Okay. We got through the questions, and somebody at the end has put, great webinar, thank you.
Thank you. Pleasure.
So I'd just like to say thank you to everybody. Our first webinar is on YouTube. This webinar will go up on YouTube as well, so you can use it, look back on it, and don't forget, give us a shout if you need a hand with anything or you need to talk through anything. We'll be only too willing to help. Okay, thank you very much, and thank you to the lovely Andrea as well.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you. Have a good day.